Hi, it's Milton Kane, Christian Democratic Party. One of the issues that we have facing us today is what are we going to do about foreign investment in this country. We've just gone through a difficult time with COVID-19. We are now coming out of it. What we've discovered during COVID-19 was the fact that our supply chain was coming from other places. Most of the things that we needed were coming from some other place. The problem is that is when that actually happens, we end up that we don't have the things that we need. One of the things that we were soon to find out, something we needed for that particular COVID-19, was in fact respirators. Fortunately, some people who were capable in Australia were able to quickly tool up and actually make some. But we actually had to create a new manufacturing program to do it, simply because we couldn't get the supply. The supply chain was broken because of this particular problems associated with travel because of the events of COVID-19. Now, that's one of the things that happens. Now, that was one small event, well, quite large, I suppose, but one event that actually stopped a fair bit of trade, and as a result of that, we found ourselves isolated from trade. One of the interesting things is that we also find that so much of Australia depends upon foreign investment. And in fact, so many foreign businesses manage and control and run so much of Australia. We note that on the 5th of June in the Sydney Morning Herald, we have the Treasurer telling us that there's going to be new deals in regard to foreign investment. We're going to face stronger deals over the last 40 odd years. We have to go back to what happened 1975, 45 years ago, which was in May 1975, when the Lima Convention was adopted by the Whitlam government. And that was to encourage a first world country, as we were considered to be at the time, to encourage manufacturing in the second and third world countries so that they would be able to be self-sustainable. One of the problems is the vehicle that was used was multinationals. As a result of that, we actually find ourselves, we're in a situation where we are a net importer of finished products. And as a result of that, what we are a net exporter of, we're a net exporter of raw materials. In other words, mining materials and also food products which actually get processed. Some of those come back to Australia. Now, when we have a look at foreign investment, what we need to look at is how much foreign investment is there in Australia at this present time. Well, these figures are as of May 2020. That's 3,844.5 billion Australian dollars have been invested by foreign businesses, foreign companies, foreign entities in Australia. Now, that's a lot of stuff. The interesting thing about it is that the top 20, and when I say the top 20, I must first of all add a caveat on that. The top 20, what they have done is they've divided China and Hong Kong as to two separate identities. I say they're the same. So while they are the top 20, in fact they are the top 19 because we joined those two together. They contribute, in far as foreign investment is concerned in this country, is $3,192 billion, leaving $652.5 billion to be invested by other countries.
Now, while it is true that with the United States, their total investment in Australia at that time was 983.7 billion, and the UK was 686.1 billion. While those two represent a significant amount, generally speaking, I think we would have to say that both of those have been historically and continue to be, and there is no time in the future that it would appear that they would be people who were in some way combatants, people opposed to our view of our world view of life and government in this country. The concerning thing comes when we have a look at trends, I guess, in the most recent years. What we need to have a look at as well is that in last year, it is 2018, 2019, the foreign investments totaled $2.3 billion, of which 58.2 billion was the United States, and 26 billion was Canada. Singapore was 16 billion, Japan was 15 billion, and China 13 billion. Now, it is worth noting that China is the biggest year-on-year investor in the last 5 years. Now, the changes to national security, which the Treasurer has brought in, the national security in relationship with this, are actually only going to deal with what we call national security matters, and they are defined in a very tight way. They deal with communication, yes, they deal with that. They deal with defence, supply, things associated with that, and some infrastructure, important, essential infrastructure like electricity and matriculated water. Now, these are, I think, small steps. Foreign investors must notify the Foreign Investment Review Board if they're intending to acquire an interest in an Australian business of greater than 10%. The Treasurer can call in on the investment. They can simply say, no, we can't do this, before, during or after, if there are any national security interests issues where there's a massive concern. Now, the national security could, in fact, as a last resort, vary conditions or order the disposal if it is deemed that the particular investment was, in fact, a significant problem to the national security risk. Now, these are all written in interesting terms. They are significant national security risks, and they are all of the time it's this significant. We don't know how significant they need to be significant. That's the problem we have. Now, the thing that's important to remember is that sometimes we actually start dealing with Australian businesses, and suddenly they're not. This is one of our problems we have in this country. Often we trade with somebody, or we're involved with business with somebody, we see somebody around and we think it's great. I'd like to point out about John Holland. John Holland is a major infrastructure builder, and this particular business has over 20 major projects happening in New South Wales. They're either under management, under contract, or in construction. Some have just been recently completed. And every state of Australia, every state government in Australia and the Commonwealth extensively use this company for major construction work. Now, the history of the company. On May 16, 1949, Sir John Holland commenced field operations for a new Australian engineering and construction company known as John Holland Company. And in 1950, John Holland and Company
won its first major civil engineering project, the construction of a water treatment power plant at Australia Paper Manufacturers at Fairfield in Victoria. Over the next 3 years, John Holland and Company would steadily grow and diversify, delivering significant projects around the country, such as New Parliament House in Canberra and the Sydney Entertainment Centre. In 1991, this was significantly acquired by Janet Holmes à Court. That means of the shares, Janet Holmes à Court purchased a significant share of that. And in 2000, that shareholding was acquired by Leighton Holdings. But in 2015, the entirety of the shareholdings, the entire business, was acquired by China Communications Construction Company. No objection by the Foreign Investment Review Board. And yet this company, China Communications Construction Company, is very close to the Chinese government. It has direct links to the Chinese Communist Party. Now, this is a process that's repeated time and time again. Sometimes these things will go to other places. For example, we know of the demise of Holden. Holden began in 1850 as a leather and goods manufacturer that produced saddles and other leather equipment for horses. And of course, then they went and moved on into building the horse-drawn carriages and other implements like that. But when the automotive industry came to Australia, they began to manufacture under license. The bodywork for the cars as the chassis and running gear were brought to the country, and somebody needed to actually build the bodywork, and they became a significant supplier of that. During the 1940s, talks began with General Motors of America, and so the Holden partnership with General Motors began. That was when we were able to produce the first Holden car, which was in 1948. But if you have a close look at that car, you will find it is a scaled down version of GM's 1946 Chev. And if you look at the cars after that, you will find many of them were just a smaller version of the United States badged cars from various badged ones that had come out of General Motors of America. Now, slowly but surely, General Motors of America would get more and more control of Holden. The Australian government kept on pumping money into Holden, but took no active management capacity of the company. Left that entirely up to the business arrangements of Holden itself. And as time went on, eventually what happened is General Motors of America owned completely the Holden business in Australia. At that particular time, we were also having huge subsidies being given. The government, on the other hand, was at the same time was removing various protective barriers on the Australian trade, the Australian automotive industry, and so that it made it easier for imports to come in. Now, when the decision was made to shut down Holden completely by the US, stop manufacturing in Australia, what it meant was we lost thousands of jobs. And then we also lost a car industry completely because Ford had gone down the same path as well. Both Ford and Holden were receiving large subsidies from the government, as was Toyota, who actually came to Australia, and Mitsubishi, who came to Australia to produce cars here as well. They all relied upon huge subsidies by the government, and yet the government took no management, took no note against their assets, took nothing. They gave our money to them to produce cars, and then they walked away with it. The thing is that what we need to remember The part of the reason for the demise of Holden was the fact that one of the badged vehicles from General Motors of America had in fact produced a faulty fuel tank, which had caused many compensation claims and warranty claims against the GM manufacturing. As a result of that, it put GM very close to the brink as these huge cases went against them. And so they needed to draw down more money from all of the other industries. And so hence Holden's contribution to the United States GM, the so-called parent, which isn't really a parent as such, it's an adopted parent company. The contribution continued to rise to the point where it became unviable for the manufacturing in Australia to occur, for that dividend to be able to be sent off to America per vehicle being produced. And that's where the demise of it was. Now, in all of this, what we have done is we've opened ourselves up to having no industry in this country. Because as these people have come together and they've worked out how to do something, they have the intellectual capacity to do it, and they've produced work for many people during the manufacturing process. One of the things that's important to understand is that when General Motors, Holden, was shut down, it wasn't just that factory that closed. You had Borg Warner in trouble because they were producing gearboxes for the Holden. You had many other places in trouble because they were producing brake components, other body part components, and also were producing various electrical components for the car. All of those support engineering industries died as well. Some of them may have retooled to do something else, but would be very small for those that were able to do that. So we lost a lot of things because we allowed the Australian business to be taken over by a foreign business. They're not there to look after ourselves, to look after us. They're there to look after themselves completely. That's all they'll ever do. Now, there are ways that we could do to protect that. One is to have trade barriers. Of course, we've entered into a world of free trade markets. Well, free, yeah, what are they? I don't believe that they are very wise. Another day I'll explain about free trade markets. But let's be very clear. We actually have people investing in this country, and one of the things that they do, and this is something that's very important, when you have a company investing in another place, what they will do is they will limit their profits in that country so that the parent company will actually be able to maximize their profits in a better place. So they will shift as much cost they can onto the company in another place, unless, of course, the tax regime is very low. As we know, dollar for dollar of earnings, of turnover, most foreign investors' companies pay very little tax. And so what should we do about it? I think about mining companies that actually do things as well, how they do various things to be able to prevent others from being able to make money. They want to control and manage the whole thing, from the mine to the transport to the port to where it leaves. This is all about reducing the amount of taxes they have to pay. We have to do better than that. I propose that we should consider imposing a 51% income tax against all businesses in this country. Therefore, we will be able to achieve at least something. I also propose that we actually tighten the regulations about who can invest in this country and how much they can. We need to keep control of our businesses. We need to keep control of our country. We need to keep control of our economy. Coming out of this particular situation where we are now in a recession depends upon a manufacturing base. I hope you're with me. This is Milton Kane. Thank you.